Okay, we're going through this book, my new book called Prevent and Reverse Obesity by Meet Rogers. Okay, so the first picture right on the first page is the concept of starch. So if you want to lose weight, number one most important thing for long-term control of your body weight is eat the majority of your calories from starch. If you're just starting out, you should try to aim for about 90% of your calories from starch, at least 60% of your calories from starch. Starches are things like potatoes, white rice, sweet potatoes. They all have only 1% of calories from fat. The lower the percentage of calories from fat, the skinnier the population is. Of all the beans, the lentils are the best because they only have 3% of calories from fat. Black beans have about 4% of calories from fat. Garbanzo beans are okay. They taste good. They have about 13% of calories from fat. Oatmeal is about 15% of calories from fat. But you notice all these plant foods are pretty low in calories from fat. Fruits also tend to be pretty low in calories from fat. The veggies are very low caloric density. But anyways, the point I'm talking about here is starch. Starch is a polymer of glucose wrapped in fiber. So it has a net effect of being like a slow release energy pill because it's low caloric density. It stretches your stomach right from the get-go, and that stretching of your stomach provides early satisfaction of hunger. Then it takes time for the intestinal enzymes to peel the starch off and free up the glucose so it can be absorbed into your blood and then pass throughout your body. The net result is you satisfy hunger with the fewest number of calories. So starch makes people skinny. A billion out of a billion white rice eaters, they're all skinny. Let's see, and also too, in my own experience too, when I thought I would just lose my weight, I got fat, in my mid-30s, and I just thought, I have great willpower, okay? But I really couldn't effectively lose the weight for about 3-4 years, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to become fat. And I'm going to not be able to escape from being fat. And then I started reading about, starch diets and everything else. I read tons and tons of stuff about nutrition and diet. Anyways, that's the key thing to know. Starch is the most important thing, and those are the starches. Quinoa, oatmeal, whole grains, barley, rye, sorghum, all that stuff. Okay, starch is the best food for weight loss, long term. And the idea is to sustain it, not just to lose the weight and then gain it all back right away. Okay, disclaimer, if you're taking any medicines for diabetes or hypertension or anticoagulation, or if you have kidney failure, you got to let your healthcare provider know to titrate the doses of your medication so you could drop your pressure too low, drop your sugar too low, and pass out. Okay, I'm not your doctor. I'm just a genius trying to score some points for getting into heaven by helping out you fat dumbasses. Okay, now here are the dietary curves. If you eat a simple sugar, you spike your glucose too high, your pancreas overcompensates, releases too much insulin, drives your blood glucose down rapidly, you get rebound hypoglycemia, you feel lousy, and you'll often reach for another simple sugar beverage, and you'll just have a roller coaster of blood glucose, and you'll be fat and sick, okay? If you eat dietary fat first, the red curve here, you'll get insulin resistance from the fat. The fat gets into the skeletal muscle faster than the glucose gets there, and then the glucose won't be able to get into the cell because there's insulin resistance, and that'll give you a postprandial. Prandial means eating, so postprandial hyperglycemia. Not good. That's your classic diabetes. And the skeletal muscle accumulation of fat is called intramyocellular lipid, and this is postprandial hyperglycemia, sort of like early phase of diabetes. Okay, now here's the best way to go. Eat the starches. The starches keep you in a relatively normal blood glucose range the most prolonged amount of time. We call that the golden mean, the Goldilocks zone. Not too high, not too low. It's where you want to be. Okay, here's a picture of Mona Lisa. She looks like a big fat transvestite, disgusting. Okay, and like I said before, she's totally overrated. That painting stinks. Michelangelo's a million times better than Mona Lisa. I wrote a lot of silly stuff in this book. I kind of wrote it fast, and I was in a good mood. I said, why look like Mona when you can look like Venus? Here's Venus, the god of love, Aphrodite, as she's also known by the Greeks. Venus is more the Roman name. Meat makes Monas. Vegan makes Venuses. Mona ends up lonely old cat ladies. Venus has an easier life because Venus attracts penis and he pays the bills. Okay? All right. So yeah, the book is full of jokes. This is from the great painting, The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli, 1485. Him and Rogier van der Weyden were the two greatest artists of the 1400s. Magnificent. And the Medicis enjoyed all the Greek stuff and were a bit of a throwback. But the Italian Renaissance was much more Catholic and Christian than is widely sort of taught to people. It is intensely religious. Okay, so here's another nice painting, Lifeline by Winslow Homer, 1884. The idea of, saving the ladies, saving the fat ladies. And what I wrote here is, saving the ladies is the easy part. A woman could be as mindless as a monkey, and he will still want her in bed. All she needs to do is be skinny. Men like women much more than women like men. He's looking for a nurse, she's looking for a purse. He wants romance, she wants finance. For a guy to get a gal, he needs to be thin with at least some muscles. He needs a job. Why do women have Virginias and men have jobs? So they'll talk to each other. Okay, it's an old joke. Okay, and then there's a Rodney Dangerfield joke. There's no such thing as an ugly rich guy. There's no such thing as a pretty homeless girl. Okay, all women are good at manipulating men. So a man needs to study female psychology or she will turn him into a platonic servant. Men run on logic and it doesn't change much. Women run on emotion and it's like the waves. It can change day to day. Okay, so that's the intro. Now time for how to get skinny. Rules of weight loss. So rule number 1, it ain't genetics. You know, every stupid person always says it's genetic, you know. It's genetic. Everybody in my family's fat. Okay, in populations where they eat a low-fat, starch-based diet, everyone is skinny, 1 billion out of 1 billion. Show me a rice eater and I'll show you a skinny person. Look at a Bruce Lee movie. Everybody's skinny except for Bolo, and he's taking anabolic steroids and eating like a sumo wrestler. Okay, here's the migration studies of the Japanese when they're back in Japan, eating their, you know, rice, sweet potatoes, and all that stuff, and their vegetables. They're all skinny, thin, and even though they smoke like chimneys, they're still, and they eat tons of salt. They're pretty healthy. They migrate to Hawaii. They start getting westernized a little bit in their diet. Start getting a little fatter and sicker, and then by the time they move to California, they're fatter and sicker like Americans, okay? So the migration studies confirm what we all know. High-fat diets, westernized diets, fried food, more meat in the diet, more processed food in the diet, people get fatter and sicker. So if you don't want to be fat and sick, avoid those things, meat, processed food, and oils, okay? You never want to blame stuff on genetics because you can't change your genetics. That's like saying it's impossible for me to get better. And by the way, I've never seen a person in my life who is fat because of genetics, other than in the journals and stuff. You don't see them in real life, okay? That's BS. Okay, they do exist, but they're rare most of the time. And I know there are some genetic conditions. I'm quite aware of them, but almost always it's because of, you know, the diet. All right, here we've got several generations of Japanese families. This is from a Dr. McDougall lecture. You know, it's one of these times too when he talked about you can see the truth. The grandparents from Japan were still eating their old-fashioned rice-based diet, and they're real skinny and healthy for their age. You know, just like the Filipino men they would work with from the sugarcane fields. They'd retire at 65, go to the Philippines, get a new bride in her 20s, raise a cohort of kids up until and then they would live to their late 80s or early 90s, okay? No Viagra in those days either. Okay, here's the parents, G2, Generation 2, and they're a little bit fatter and sicker than the parents. And then the grandchildren are little blimps, just like the Western American kids from eating all the high fructose corn syrup and soda pop and macaroni and cheese and Twinkies and all the other junk food kids eat. Okay. So here's, like I said, talking to these patients. They go, well, it has to be genetics. Everyone in my family is fat. We all have hypertension, diabetes, and heart disease. So I ask them, what do you eat for dinner? And they usually say something like fish or chicken, a baked potato with some butter, some bread, some olive oil, salad with dressing, and some beer. And I'm like, those are all the obesogenic foods. The only thing genetic in these families is that they're all stupid. All of them could easily become skinny if they ate foods that make people skinny. Okay, so that's it for part 1 on how to prevent and reverse obesity. Hope you found it helpful.